Today, we are going to listen to the story Frankenstein. This famous story was written by Mary Shelley and was first published in 1818. It is one of the most famous stories ever written. It tells us about dreams, science, loneliness, and the importance of taking responsibility for our actions. Far from busy cities, among the cold mountains of Switzerland, there lived a young man named Victor Frankenstein. Victor was born into a kind and loving family. His parents cared deeply for him, and they taught him to be honest, curious, and hardworking. As a little boy, Victor loved to ask questions about the world. He wanted to know how flowers grew, why stars filled the night sky, and what made people alive. While other children spent many hours playing games, Victor often sat quietly with books in his hands, dreaming about great discoveries. As Victor grew older, his interest became stronger. He spent many days reading old books about science, nature, and strange ideas that many people had already forgotten. Some of those books spoke about turning metal into gold, or finding the secret to living forever. Even though many of these ideas were not true, Victor found them exciting. They filled his mind with endless possibilities. He believed that one day he could discover something that would change the world forever. Victor was not alone during his happy childhood. He had a close friend named Henry Clerval. Henry was cheerful, kind, and full of imagination. While Victor loved science, Henry loved stories of brave heroes and exciting adventures. The two friends were very different, but they enjoyed spending time together. Henry often reminded Victor to laugh, relax, and enjoy life instead of thinking only about work. Victor also shared a special bond with a young woman named Elizabeth. She had become part of Victor's family when they were both children. Elizabeth was gentle, caring, and thoughtful. She always tried to help others, and everyone loved her warm smile. Victor admired her kindness and felt peaceful whenever they spent time together. She believed that happiness came from family, friendship, and love, while Victor believed that knowledge could solve every problem. Even so, they cared deeply for each other. As the years passed, Victor became even more interested in science. He listened carefully whenever teachers spoke about nature or the human body. He wanted to understand every mystery hidden inside life itself. One question stayed in his mind day and night. What gives life to a human being? Why does life begin? And why does it end? The more he thought about these questions, the more determined he became to find the answers. One sad day changed Victor's life forever. His beloved mother became very sick after caring for another family member. Despite everyone's hope and prayers, she passed away. Before she died, she asked Victor and Elizabeth to continue loving and supporting each other. Her death filled the family with deep sadness. Victor missed her every single day, and her loss made him think even more about life and death. He wished there were a way to stop people from dying. Not long after this painful event, Victor left home to study at a famous university in Germany. Saying goodbye to his family was difficult, but he believed that his future waited there. Elizabeth gave him warm wishes, and Henry promised that they would meet again. Victor carried many dreams in his heart as he began his long journey. When Victor arrived at the university, everything felt new and exciting. The city was full of students from many different places. Large buildings, busy streets, and quiet libraries surrounded him. Soon, he met several professors who were experts in science. One professor encouraged Victor to stop reading old ideas and begin studying modern science. Instead, he explained, that real knowledge came from careful observation, experiments, and patience. Victor listened closely. At first, he felt embarrassed that he had spent so much time studying books that many scientists no longer respected. But instead of giving up, he became even more determined to learn. He spent long hours attending classes and reading new scientific discoveries. Every day brought another exciting lesson. Slowly, Victor's understanding of chemistry, biology, and physics grew stronger. His professors noticed his intelligence and praised his hard work. Their kind words made Victor believe that he could achieve something extraordinary. He no longer wanted only to understand nature. He wanted to control it. Deep inside his heart, a dangerous thought began to grow. What if a person could create life instead of simply studying it? That single idea slowly took over Victor's mind. He could think about little else. Every new book he read, every experiment he watched, and every lecture he attended seemed to bring him closer to his impossible dream. He became convinced that the greatest discovery in history was waiting for him alone. Victor began spending nearly all his time inside laboratories and libraries, while other students laughed together, walked through the city, or visited their families. Victor stayed alone. He studied the human body with endless curiosity. He visited hospitals, learned about diseases, and carefully examined everything he could. Sometimes he even went to lonely places where death had recently visited, hoping to understand the final mystery of life. The work became difficult and exhausting. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Victor often forgot to eat proper meals or get enough sleep. His face became pale, and dark circles appeared under his eyes. Friends wrote letters asking how he was, but he rarely answered them. Elizabeth sent warm messages filled with love and concern, yet Victor placed them aside, promising himself that he would read them later. Later never seemed to come. Henry also missed his friend deeply. He wondered why Victor had become so quiet. The cheerful young man who once shared dreams and laughter had disappeared. In his place stood someone who cared only about one great secret. Victor believed that once he finished his work, everyone would understand why he had sacrificed so much. Late at night, when the university became silent and the streets outside grew empty, Victor continued his experiments alone. The small lights inside his laboratory burned until morning. Strange tools covered his tables. Books lay open everywhere. Bottles, papers, and scientific instruments filled every corner of the room. Victor hardly noticed the passing seasons outside his window. Then, after nearly 2 years of endless work, Victor believed he had finally found the answer he had been searching for. His heart raced with excitement and fear. Everything was ready. The dream that had controlled his life was about to become real. He stood alone in the silent laboratory, surrounded by darkness, waiting for the moment that he believed would change the world forever. A powerful storm covered the sky that night. Dark clouds moved across the moon, and loud thunder echoed through the streets. Rain fell heavily against the windows of Victor's laboratory. Inside the room, strange machines stood ready, and every detail of his long experiment had been carefully prepared. Victor's hands shook as he checked everything one last time. He had worked for years to reach this moment, and now there was no turning back. When everything was ready, Victor began his experiment. For a few long moments, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the great body lying on the table began to move. One hand twitched. The chest rose with a deep breath. Finally, two dull yellow eyes opened and looked around the room. Victor stared in complete silence. The impossible had happened. He had created life. But instead of feeling proud, Victor was filled with horror. The dream that had seemed so wonderful in his imagination now looked frightening. The creature was much larger than any normal man because Victor had needed large body parts to make his work easier. Its skin stretched tightly over its body, showing the muscles underneath. Its black hair hung loosely around its face, but its watery eyes and strange features filled Victor with fear. He realized. The creature slowly reached out one hand toward Victor. It did not speak. It simply looked at the man who had brought it into the world. But Victor could not bear the sight. His heart pounded wildly as he rushed out of the laboratory. He ran through the dark streets without looking back. The cold rain soaked his clothes, but he hardly noticed. All he could think about was escaping from the terrible being he had created. Victor wandered through the city until morning. He felt weak, frightened, and deeply ashamed. His mind refused to believe what had happened during the night. He had wanted to defeat death, yet all he could remember was the fearful face of the creature opening its eyes. The great dream that had guided his life had become a terrible nightmare. The next morning, while Victor was still trying to calm himself, he met someone he had not expected. His old friend Henry Clerval had arrived in the city to study and hoped to surprise him. Henry greeted Victor warmly with a bright smile, but he quickly noticed that something was wrong. Victor looked pale, exhausted, and confused. His clothes were untidy, and his eyes showed many nights without sleep. Henry asked many questions, but Victor could not explain the truth. Instead, he simply said that he had been working too hard. Henry gently encouraged his friend to rest. Together, they walked back toward Victor's apartment. Victor feared what they might find there. His hands trembled as he opened the door. To his great surprise, the laboratory was empty. The creature had disappeared. Victor searched every room, but there was no sign of the being he had created. Instead of feeling relieved, he became even more worried. The creature was somewhere outside in the world, completely alone. Victor did not know what it would do or where it would go. He tried to push these thoughts away, telling himself that perhaps it would simply disappear forever. The months that followed were difficult. Victor became seriously ill. His body and mind had suffered from years of endless work, fear, and guilt. Henry stayed by his side every day, caring for him with great patience. He brought food, read cheerful stories, and spoke kindly whenever Victor felt hopeless. Without Henry's friendship, Victor might never have recovered. Slowly, Victor grew stronger again. Spring arrived, filling the streets with warm sunlight and fresh flowers. For the first time in many months, Victor left his room and walked outside with Henry. The beauty of nature helped calm his troubled mind. Birds sang in the trees, children laughed in the parks, and gentle winds carried the smell of fresh grass. For a little while, Victor almost believed that his terrible secret belonged to the past. Then one day, a letter arrived from home. As Victor unfolded the letter, his hands began to shake. The news inside was heartbreaking. His youngest brother, William, had been murdered near the family home. No one knew who had committed the terrible crime. Victor could hardly breathe as he read the words again and again. He loved William deeply. The cheerful little boy had brought happiness to everyone around him. Victor immediately began the long journey back to Switzerland. During the trip, dark thoughts filled his mind. He remembered the creature that had escaped from his laboratory. At first, He tried to reject the idea, but the fear grew stronger with every mile. Could the creature somehow be connected to William's death? Victor prayed that the answer would be no. Late one evening, as Victor approached the mountains near his home, another storm covered the sky. Bright lightning flashed across the dark clouds, lighting the rocky hills for only a moment at a time. Suddenly, during one brilliant flash of light, Victor saw a giant figure climbing quickly across the mountainside. The figure moved with surprising speed and disappeared into the darkness almost at once. Victor froze. He recognized the shape immediately. It was the creature. In that terrible moment, Victor became certain that the being he had created had killed his little brother. Fear and guilt crushed his heart. He wanted to chase the creature, but it vanished into the mountains before he could move. Victor stood alone in the storm, knowing that his own actions had brought terrible suffering to his family. When Victor finally reached home, the sadness inside the house was almost too great to bear. His father looked older and weaker. Elizabeth cried often because she loved William like a younger brother. Every room seemed quieter than before. The family struggled to understand why such a terrible event had happened. Soon another shocking piece of news arrived. A young woman named Justine, who had worked for Victor's family for many years, had been arrested for William's murder. The police had found a valuable necklace that belonged to William in one of her pockets. This seemed like strong evidence against her. Victor knew in his heart that Justine was innocent. She had always been gentle, honest, and kind. Yet, he also knew that no one would believe the unbelievable truth. If he told the court about the creature he had created, everyone would think he had lost his mind. He remained silent, even though every moment of silence filled him with greater guilt. During the trial, Justine calmly told the judges that she had not killed William. She spoke with honesty and sadness. Elizabeth stood before the court and defended her with all her heart. She described Justine's good character and reminded everyone of her years of faithful service to the family. But fear and suspicion were stronger than kindness. The judges believed the evidence instead of the truth. Justine was found guilty. Victor watched helplessly as another innocent life was destroyed because of the secret he carried inside him. He blamed himself for everything. If he had never tried to create life, William would still be alive, and Justine would never have faced such a cruel fate. After the trial, Victor could no longer find peace. He walked alone through forests and climbed into the high mountains, hoping that the beauty of nature would quiet the pain inside his heart. The fresh air, the flowing rivers, and the snow-covered peaks reminded him that the world still held great beauty, even while his own life seemed filled with darkness. One cold afternoon, while Victor was walking among the lonely mountains, he noticed a familiar figure approaching across the ice. The giant shape moved confidently over the frozen ground. It was the creature. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Victor's anger burned inside him. He wanted to punish the being he believed had destroyed his family. But before Victor could say a word, the creature raised one hand peacefully and looked at him with deep sadness. Then, in a calm and surprisingly gentle voice, the creature spoke. "I know you hate me," it said. "But before you judge me, listen to my story." Hear what happened after you left me alone in the world." Victor stood in silence as the creature waited for his answer. At first, anger filled his heart. He wanted to refuse and walk away. Yet something in the creature's voice sounded full of pain instead of hate. After a long pause, Victor finally agreed to listen. Together, they entered a small mountain shelter where the cold wind could not reach them. There, beside a quiet fire, the creature began telling the story of its lonely life. "When I first opened my eyes," the creature said, "I understood nothing. I could not speak. I did not know who I was or why I was alive. I reached toward you because you were the first person I saw. But you ran away from me. I was left completely alone." The creature explained that it had wandered through forests and fields like a frightened child. Everything was new. Bright sunlight hurt its eyes. Cold rain made it shiver. Hunger and thirst caused great pain because it did not know where to find food or clean water. Sometimes it ate berries and nuts. Sometimes it drank from small streams. Every day was a struggle simply to survive. Whenever the creature met people, it hoped they would help. Instead, they screamed in fear. Children cried. Adults chased it away with sticks and stones. Dogs barked and attacked. The creature could not understand why everyone hated it before hearing even a single word. It slowly realized that its frightening appearance made people believe it was dangerous, even when it wished only for kindness. One day, the creature found a small abandoned building near a simple country cottage. It quietly hid there because no one could see it. Through a small opening in the wall, it watched the family living inside the cottage. There was an old blind father and his 2 grown children, a young man named Felix and his sister Agatha. Although they were poor, they cared deeply for one another. They shared their food, worked hard every day, and spoke with love and respect. The creature watched them for many months. At first, it simply observed them in silence. Soon, it began to understand their language by listening carefully to every conversation. Day after day, it learned the meaning of new words. It listened to their stories, their laughter, and even their tears. Without anyone teaching it directly, the creature slowly learned how to speak, read, and think. As the seasons changed, the creature secretly helped the family. Every night, it gathered firewood and left it outside their door before sunrise. The family never knew who was helping them, but they were thankful for the mysterious gift. Seeing their happiness brought joy to the creature's lonely heart. It hoped that one day they might accept it as a friend. During this time, another young woman arrived at the cottage. Her name was Safi. She had traveled from a distant land to be with Felix because they loved each other. Felix patiently taught her to speak and read. As the creature listened to these lessons from its hiding place, it learned even more about the world. It discovered history, geography, and the lives of many different people. It also learned about kindness, justice, and the importance of family. The creature found several books that someone had left behind. It read them carefully, again and again. The stories opened its mind and filled it with new questions. It learned that human beings could be brave, generous, and loving. But it also learned that people could be cruel, selfish, and unfair. As its understanding grew, so did its sadness. The creature realized that it had no family, no friends, and no place in the world. One day, it found an old coat lying in the forest. Inside one pocket was a small notebook. The notebook belonged to Victor Frankenstein, As the creature slowly read the pages, it discovered the terrible truth about its own creation. It learned that Victor had collected body parts, built a living being, and then abandoned it in horror. The creature finally understood that Victor was its creator, and also the first person who had rejected it. The creature's sorrow became even deeper. "I did not ask to be born," it quietly told Victor. "I only wanted someone to care for me." Even after learning this painful truth, the creature still hoped for friendship. It believed that the family in the cottage might accept it because the old father was blind and could not judge by appearance. One afternoon, when Felix and Agatha were away, the creature gathered its courage and entered the small home. The old man welcomed the stranger kindly because he could hear only the creature's gentle voice. For the first time, the creature felt hope. They spoke together for several peaceful minutes. The old man listened with kindness as the creature described its loneliness and wished for a friend. But suddenly, Felix, Agatha, and Safi returned home. The moment they saw the creature, they became terrified. Felix struck it with a stick, while the others cried out in fear. The creature fled into the forest with a broken heart. The next morning, the family had left the cottage forever. They were too frightened to return. The little home that had filled the creature with hope now stood empty and silent. In its great sadness and anger, the creature set fire to the abandoned cottage before walking away alone once more. "I loved people," the creature said softly, "but they gave me only fear and pain. Little by little, kindness disappeared from my heart." The creature wandered for many days until it found the road leading toward Victor's family home. It believed that perhaps Victor would finally accept responsibility for creating it. Instead, before reaching the house, it met a young boy playing alone in the woods. The child was William Frankenstein. The creature smiled and tried to speak gently. It thought that perhaps a child would not judge by appearance, but William screamed in terror and struggled to escape. Then the boy proudly shouted that his father was an important man and that his brother, Victor Frankenstein, would punish anyone who hurt him. When the creature heard Victor's name, all its buried anger returned at once. In a moment of uncontrolled rage, it grabbed the frightened child. The struggle lasted only a short time before William became still. As the creature looked down, it realized what it had done. Filled with bitterness, it took William's necklace and later placed it where Justine would be blamed. Victor listened with horror, his heart filled with grief as every terrible event became clear. He could not forgive the murder of his little brother or the death of innocent Justine. Yet, he also understood that his own actions had begun the chain of suffering. By creating life and then abandoning it, he had allowed loneliness and hatred to grow inside the creature. The creature looked directly into Victor's eyes. "You are my creator," it said. "I was born with the ability to love. It was rejection that turned me into a monster. I have no family, no companion, and no one who understands me. Make another being like me, a woman who will share my lonely life. We will leave humanity forever. We will live far away where no one will ever see us again." Victor remained silent for a long time. The request frightened him. If he created another living being, perhaps the world would face even greater danger. But if he refused, the creature might continue seeking revenge. The cold mountain wind blew outside the shelter as both of them waited. Victor knew that whatever choice he made next would change both of their lives forever.